Hi everyone, welcome back to the Tom Morgan Drum Studio. Today we're back in the book called A Sequential Approach to Fundamental Snare Drum. We've been using that book and just going through it page by page in this playlist. And today we've reached page 64 and 65, which is another multiple percussion solo now for two drums, a snare drum and a tom-tom. And I'm using my snare drum and I've added this old marching drum just with no snares that I use for a tom-tom. I've had this drum since I was in junior high. But you could use a tom-tom off your drum set. You could use your floor tom and just raise it up if you can get it up high enough. If you don't have any drums and you haven't, you're still a beginner and you're just using pads, just use your pad for the snare drum and some other sound surface, a piece of wood or something like that for the other side, the tom-tom part. It doesn't matter. You mainly just need two different sounds. Okay, and we have instructions at the beginning of page 64. It says to be sure to place the tom-tom on the left and the snare drum on the right. So that's the way I have it here. On my left is the tom-tom. And you do that because the stickings are set up the way it's written. If you use the right-hand lead system that we've talked about in earlier videos, you won't really need to hardly do anything. You won't have to deviate from that at all. You can just, it'll tell you what the sticking is. Both drums should be positioned flat and at the same height. So I have that here. Carefully observe the dynamics. The dynamics really make this little piece. If you just play it without the dynamics, it's not anywhere near as interesting as if you really exaggerate the dynamics. And then the other thing that's very important is to work for a smooth flowing motion between the drums. So I don't want to play like this between the drums. I want to, when I'm over here and I'm going to hit this drum, I just kind of rotate my hand over. As opposed to moving my whole arm with my hand. And the same thing as I'm moving back and forth this way. And this is important because when you get to the drum set and you're moving around with 3 or 4, however many drums you have, you're going to want to do the same thing. If this was my snare drum and I was playing my floor tom and I was going to play something like, I wouldn't want to play that like, okay, that's very awkward. And it's not gonna sound as smooth because your motions are not smooth. So your motions will directly affect the sound and the flow of what your music sounds like. Okay, let's talk about a couple other little details about this before we get into it. You notice it's written on 2 lines. The top line is the snare, the bottom line is the tom. And so if we play the first measure, if you just use our regular right-hand lead system, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, it works out very well on this setup. Okay, and if I do the dynamics, I'm going to bring my stick down low here and then bring them up for the dynamic. Okay, so I've noticed on some of these videos that the dynamics don't come through quite as strongly as I'd like. But if you look at my stick height, of course, stick height controls dynamics, so you can tell how soft I'm playing. Okay, when we get down to the second system, and by the way, we call these systems rather than lines when you have multiple lines. So this system has 2 lines. So we just drop down to the system below, the top one, and we see that at this point we have, in the second measure, I play on the downbeat on the snare, And then I'm going to use my left hand only to play the eighth notes on the tom. Because as you can see at the end of that system, I'm going to start playing the right hand at the same time as I'm playing left hand, two different rhythms. So the left hand does a decrescendo down to piano, and then when the right hand comes in, it's going to come in at mezzo forte. So it sounds like this. So it takes some practice to be able to play those two rhythms together and to play one hand mezzo forte and the other hand piano at the same time. That's the tricky part, but that's the skill you want to develop as you practice this. Now that last measure of the second system there, that's a tricky little rhythm and it recurs a couple of times. So you're going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So if you kind of think of it as one rhythm, even though you're really playing two different rhythms, but think of it as together, left, right, together. Together, left, right, together. And practice that little measure, that little lick right there, really slowly until that just becomes kind of second nature. So you can just go. And then you see it happens several times in the next couple of systems down. Okay? So once you can play that little tricky thing, the other parts really, you're really just playing both drums simultaneously. Like in the third system, that's pretty easy just to go 1. Okay, and here we don't want to flam this. We don't want to play it so that the left stick hits just before the right or the other way around. We want those to be exactly together. Also notice that I'm kind of moving my left stick over toward the rim because it's going to be playing soft. And I'm going to play my right stick more out toward just off center. And that helps you, again, get that dynamic contrast there. All right, so that keeps going down to the fourth system, third measure, and then we have both, we're back to playing one drum at a time, and we play that last little measure. And that ends that section. Then the right hand switches to forte with a decrescendo, just like what the left hand did up in the second system. Now the right hand's going to do the same thing. So the right hand has the accompaniment now, and the left hand has the melody. Just like earlier it was the other way around. The left hand was accompaniment and the right hand was melody. Okay, so now we're down to where the left hand enters there in the second measure of the second to last system. So the left hand is mezzo forte and the right hand is piano. So it's going to be... And then we have this crazy looking measure. And if you first look at that, it looks kind of crazy. But let me explain how that works. You can see that the stems in this on 3En to 4En, on the left hand, I have the sticking written there. The left hand still plays mezzo forte and the right hand plays piano. And what the only thing we're doing there is playing that rhythm exactly the way we would normally play it. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right. But we're playing the right hand still at piano and the left hand still at mezzo piano. And so your right hand is still playing eighth notes all the way through that measure, and your left hand is just bringing out what would be the melody. Okay, and the same thing down in that first measure of the last system of that page. You just play that rhythm the way you normally would. 1 and 2 and 3 and the sticking is written out for you, but the stem down notes are the left hand, and you play them at mezzo forte, and you keep playing the other notes with the right hand at piano. And again, you're just playing eighth notes all through there. So it looks tricky when you first look at it, but once you see what it is, it's actually pretty easy. Okay, and that leads us to the next section, the second measure of the bottom of the page there, the last system of that page. And that's another little rhythm that at first looks tricky, but it's just together, right, left, right, together, right, left, right, together, right. And that repeats itself 2 more times. And notice we have a crescendo. So we're going to gradually crescendo that little rhythm up to forte at the top of the second page. So 1, give that quarter note 1 count at the top of page 65. Okay, now we're on the home stretch here. So all of this part is, you're just going to play exactly the way you would stick this with the right hand lead system, but bring out the accents that will happen all with the right hand. I think it's all with the right hand. And then notice that there's something called a subito piano in the last measure of that top line. Subito piano means suddenly softer. So if I start on the second measure at the top of page 65, it's going to sound like this. So forth through the whole thing. Notice again, I'm not going, I'm going. Okay, I'm rotating, pivoting my stick or my wrist this way rather than moving my whole arm. Eventually, this gets a little more dense when we get down about halfway through the page, and it's going to become very important for you to do this motion at this point, because this part's going to sound like this. This is starting the beginning of the 4th system of that page. And that's the end of it. The last four measures are kind of a return to the theme that we had at the beginning. So you can see how important dynamics are in this. And it does take some practice to be able to drop your sticks low suddenly and bring up the volume with a crescendo and not lose control. So practice it very slowly at first, and practice it in sections, so that you can really concentrate on small parts of it at once, and give your brain time to understand it. Don't just start at the beginning and go all the way through and keep starting over. It's better to do short sections. You can easily see where the sections are in this little piece. Okay, now I'm going to play it for you, and I'm going to play it kind of up to tempo, so you get an idea of the goal that you're shooting for here. Okay? So, here we go. 1, 2, and ready, and go. I should have played the last two measures. It actually ends on the snare drum. Okay, so that is called Grove's Groove. I actually wrote that for a student of mine many, many years ago whose last name was Grove. And then when I wrote this book, I just incorporated it into the book at the point where it seemed to fit. All right, so practice it again. Start slowly. Don't try to do it at performance tempo, and give yourself a break. Don't try to, speed through it. Learn it slowly, and then you can gradually move the tempo up. All right, please subscribe if you haven't, and please like this video, and stay tuned because we're going to finish this book over the coming next several videos and get you all the way through it. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.